Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us. It really means a lot that you took the time from your schedule, from your daily lives, to spend some time to think about and reflect about the most important thing in your life, and that's yourself. Last week, we spoke about the idea that our mind is a very great gift that we have been given, but because we haven't had enough training on how to use our mind, one of the best gifts, one of the best tools that we have been given has turned into one of the sources of most of our problems. If you look at our daily lives, most of the problems we have are either stresses, fears, negative thoughts, self-doubt. And a lot of these thoughts are actually the place for them is in our mind. So that's what we spoke about last week. How one of the most important tools that as human beings we possess, our mind, which can make our life incredible, fascinating. Every single thing human beings have created has been created through the mind. But the very same thing has turned into a source of a lot of our problems, thoughts, doubts, fears, stress. So that was the topic for last week. This week, we're going to speak about another thing which can create suffering if not handled well. And that is our desires. If you go online or maybe to a lecture about spirituality, about leading a good life, about how to not have suffering, you may have come across this idea that a lot of people say our desires are the source of suffering. And because this idea has been there, a lot of teachings have been spread based on that idea. And today we're trying to see if that is true. Today we'll try to analyze that idea, see if really ideas are the source of our suffering. Desires are the source of our suffering. We will try to analyze that together and then see how should we go about living a life in which our desires don't lead to actually any problems. So, today we'll talk about desires. The first thing we need to pay attention to is that is really desire the source of suffering? For example, I want something. Does that necessarily lead to a difficulty if I want a car, if I want a nice job, if I want to have friends, if a person desires to have a partner? Does that lead to suffering naturally, essentially? The answer is no. Desire on its own doesn't necessarily lead to suffering. So what is the issue? Why so many people say that desire is the root of suffering? The answer is that is unfulfilled desire. Okay? So if, let's say, I wanted to get married to someone, but that didn't work out, it didn't happen, then the unfulfilled desire will lead to suffering. But just the mere fact that I desire to be with someone, it won't lead to suffering. In fact, if you look at most pleasures you've had in life, most joyful moments you've had, they are the moments in which you desired something and you were either working towards it or you got it. So desire on its own is not the source of suffering. It is unfulfilled desire that leads to suffering, right? If you really wanted something and it didn't happen, or if you really wanted something, you really desired something not to happen and it happened, that is what causes suffering. So, what is the answer? What is the solution? Actually, let's take a few seconds and to hear what you're saying. Of course, I know that the comment section right now is off in the live session. But for yourself, think about this and see what is the solution that either you have come up with or you've heard from here and there. Think about it for a second. What is the solution that you have heard? The solution that you've chosen for your life. It probably is among one of these ones that I'm going to count. Some people will say, yes, unfulfilled desires are going to cause pain, suffering. You love someone, you don't reach them. You want a job, you don't get it. But that's just part of life. You got to deal with it. Because you can't ignore the fact that desires also lead to a lot of great things, right? Your desire can make you for example, you want to get a job, so it makes you work harder. You want this desire to look a certain way, so it makes you look good. Or they may even say that, you know what, even in that pain there is beauty. So they would say that, yes, you may want to get married to someone, it doesn't work out, but that heartbreak itself is part of the experience of life. It's beautiful. So many movies are about it. So many books are written about it. So that's one approach. The approach that says it is what it is. It is what it is. Yes, desires are desire as much as you want. If you don't reach it, yes, it's going to be suffering, but deal with the suffering. Suffering is just part of life. That's one approach. And I think, inshallah, later on we'll see why this approach came to being. It seems to be a reaction to the second solution that I'm going to share. In the second solution, what they say is that kill all your desires. Get rid of all your desires, right? So they try to eradicate the whole question in order to give a solution, right? So if unfulfilled desires lead to suffering, well, the way not to have suffering is never desire anything. That's another approach, right? Now, sometimes they even attribute these to spiritual teachers. But today we'll try to see if that's actually correct or not. What do you think about this? Do you think getting rid of desires altogether is a justified solution to the problem? For example, I don't know if you've heard or not, they say if expectations lead to disappointments, then don't expect anything at all. Or, you know what? The main source of all suffering is your love for this world. So detach yourself from this world. Now, it does seem like a good approach, but when you really think about it, you see that it doesn't really work. It may look nice in a lecture, but in real life, you will see that it doesn't really play out well. Well, for starters, it seems to be impossible to get rid of all your desires. Because even if your idea is that unfulfilled desire leads to suffering. So, in order not to suffer, I shouldn't desire anything at all. Well, that on its own is a desire. The desire to get rid of all your desires, that's another desire. And actually, that is a desire which is very difficult to fulfill because you're a human being. And it would be such an impossible task to get rid of all your desires. So, even your idea, your wish to get rid of all your desires, that on its own is a desire which is almost impossible to fulfill. So by doing that, you have actually guaranteed yourself for disappointment. Because you cannot really control yourself that much. You can't. You're a human being. You will desire things. Now, the second point also about this approach is that really a life worth living? A life without desire? And in order to understand that, we need to look at what desire actually is. And we should see, can we really live without desire? See, the very fact that I came to give this talk, have this live session, and you came and sat and you're listening, All of these are desires. You desire to be here. Every time we do something, every time we move from a point A to point B, anytime we do anything, it is a desire that motivates us. Whatever you do in life, movement, any action, why would you do it? Why would you rather something over doing nothing? So you can see that without desire, life is impossible. Life is, in a way, we can say, the essence of desire. If you think about it, desire and life are very similar. Your desire is actually your life force. The only way you cannot desire anything is if you're not alive. Because as long as you're alive, you will do things. You'll move from this place to another place. You'll do things. You'll say things. And in doing all of that, you're desiring. Otherwise, why would you go somewhere? Right? So in all of those, you're desiring something. So desire is not something we can get rid of. And also, without desire, we are getting closer and closer to death, because to live is to desire. And a very beautiful point that I heard is this idea that even if your mind, you try to convince yourself that I don't want to desire anything, your body would call BS on that. Your body would say that's nonsense. You know why? Because try to stop breathing, right? Your body would say, no, I want to breathe. Your body is telling you this idea is wrong, because your body says, I want to live. The very fact that your heart is beating, your lungs are cleaning this beautiful blood, getting oxygens back in your blood, and you're breathing, all of this shows that your body has desire to live. So desire itself is very closely linked to our life force. So it is a kind of a perhaps misunderstanding to say that in order to live spiritually, or in order to live well, or in order not to have sufferings, we need to get rid of our desires, because that's just impossible. So what is the solution? So far, we've spoken about two approaches. Some people say, well, it is what it is. Live your life. There may be pain. There may be suffering. It's all right. It's part of life. Some say, get rid of desires. And we said that doesn't really work. It's impossible to get rid of desires. Even if you want to get rid of your desires, that's a desire on its own. The desire to get rid of all your desires. And also, what is life without desire? What is life without the beautiful energy that desire gives us? Desire is our motivation to do things, to love our children, to have children, to get married, to see them grow, to provide a good life for them. So that's one thing. The second approach, they say, okay, if I don't want to accept the difficulty that is caused by an unfulfilled desire, and you're telling me that I cannot get rid of my desires, well, then maybe I can reduce my desires. Because you're saying that the source of suffering is an unfulfilled desire. Okay? So if, for example, I wanted to get married to someone and it didn't work out, or if I wanted to have children, I can't have children. Or let's say I wanted to get a job, I couldn't get a job. I wanted to get into this university, I desired it, it didn't work out. All of these unfulfilled desires leads to pain. Well then, if the unfulfilled desire is the source of suffering, so if I reduce my desires, there would be less chances of my desires getting unfulfilled. So I will have less suffering. So this is another solution people have come up with. In order to get less disappointed, let me reduce my desires. Now, it may seem very logical. It may seem like a good solution. However, again, this has a shortcoming. Because in your effort to try and avoid a frustration, you have actually made sure you have guaranteed it, right? So you were worried that life may not happen the way you want it to happen, but then you said, you know what, in order to make sure that doesn't happen, I will voluntarily resist that part of life. What does it mean to say I'll reduce my desires? It means that I won't even go around certain things. In other words, I will resist parts of life. That is the same as not participating in a competition out of the fear of losing. Well, what is the easiest way to guarantee that you'll never win? If you don't even play in a competition. So by saying that I'll reduce my desires so that there would be less chance of unfulfilled desire, what you're actually doing is the very same thing you were trying to avoid. You were worried that maybe you, for example, may fall in love with someone and the marriage wouldn't work. So you may say, you know what? I'll never want to go close to love. Son, love is not for us. Let me not expect a romantic life. Or let me not expect a certain job. Or let me not even desire this. But what you're doing is you're actually voluntarily resisting life. You're limiting yourself. So even this approach, we can say it's a kind of small mini suicides. Now imagine if a person is worried that they may not have children after they get married, and they would say, you know what, I don't want children. Well, you are creating the very thing you're trying to avoid. So this is not a good strategy for life. This is a good strategy for death. Because if I want to avoid all areas of life, then what's the point of this life? I haven't come here to just breathe. No, I'm here to experience life as fully as I can. And I don't need to resist any area just out of the fear that I would get disappointed. So to reduce our desires is not the answer. Because if you remember, we said desire is the force that makes us move, the force that makes us experience life. So if you limit your desires, you're actually limiting your life. You're saying that I'm not going to live in that area. I'm not going to live in that area. You know what? Love, not part of my life. That job, not part of my life. So you're basically getting rid of so many aspects of your life. That's one thing. Second thing, it doesn't matter how many desires you have, even if you keep limiting them. As long as even you have a few, there would be some which are unfulfilled and you're going to be miserable anyway. There will be unfulfilled desires, whether you have 1,000 desires or you have 10 desires. So even if you reduce them, if you get rid of so many of your desires, still, as long as you have a few, some of them would be unfulfilled and you're going to experience the unfulfilled desire, which leads to suffering. So far we studied 3 approaches. One approach was to say, you know what, it's going to lead to suffering. It is what it is. Second approach was, let's get rid of all desires so that there would be no chance of any desire unfulfilled leading to suffering. But we said that's not going to work, because that on its own is a desire, the desire to get rid of all desires. And that's one which is impossible to achieve, because as long as you are alive, as long as you're a human being, you will always have desires. Desire is the force of life. To breathe is a desire. Your heart beating, that's the desire. That's your body saying, I want to live. And as long as you're alive, you should have desire. You should have the desire to live, to experience life, to do so many things, right? Not to have desires is to die. And the third approach was to limit our desires. We said, again, that's not the answer. Because if to live is to desire, to limit your desires is to limit your life, to narrow down your experience of life. And this is actually usually one of the defense mechanisms that a lot of people have, but it really makes their experience of life very miserable. It's like the person who's had a bad marriage and afterwards they just can't trust anyone. But if you don't fix that, right, they would say, you know what? I trusted someone, they betrayed my trust, so the way to go about is to never trust anyone. Well, no, that's not the way. Yes, if you don't trust anyone, then no one will break your trust. But you limit yourself on so many things. The experience of love, the experience of friendship, the experience of having a partner, right? The beauty of being able to trust someone. So you feel like you're safeguarding yourself, but what you're doing is that you are resisting life. So to reduce our desires is to resist life, at least an aspect of life. And it still wouldn't work, because even if you reduce your desires, you still have a few. And as long as you've got a few, some of them will be unfulfilled and suffering will come. And if you've paid attention to your experience of life, your mind is in such a way that it doesn't matter if you've got 3 unfulfilled desires or 1, it still creates misery for you. Even with 1 unfulfilled desire, it makes your life hell. So that's not the solution either. So what is the solution? Well, before getting to that level, I want to talk a little bit about what happens when we desire something. What is desire? What is the nature of it? Why do we have these desires? And then inshallah we'll talk about solutions as well. So, as I said, desire is actually a very fundamental aspect of who we are. In other words, we can say desire is essential to life. Life has a lot of energy, right? When you look at, for example, an object that doesn't move, right? We call them inanimate objects, objects which are not alive. You look at them, you see there's no life, there's no movement, right? So in some ways you can see one of the ways in which we distinguish between life and the opposite of life is movement. So life naturally, essentially has movement in it, right? Any person who's alive would like to do something, go somewhere, achieve certain things, move towards something. And this is desire. And you can see it's fundamental to life. And you and I, we're human beings, we're alive, we're life. And life cannot stay. If life stays, it's no longer life, it's death. So life, by nature, has movement, wants to go somewhere, wants to do things. And that is desire. That is desire. As simple as that. It is fundamental to life. But what happens is that because we don't exactly know what is it that our life wants to go to, where is this movement? What is the destination of this movement? Because we said desire is this innate nature of life to get somewhere, right? The difference between a stone and a live object. The live object wants to get somewhere. It has a goal. And that becomes its desire. But because we don't know what is the destination of the life that we are, the soul that we have, along the way, we pick up some other things and we think that's what we need. That's where we should go. Okay? In other words, we are just trying to find the destination, and desire is there to push us towards the destination. If we didn't have any desire, we'd just sit here. Think about it. If a person doesn't have desire, they won't work. They won't have children. They won't get married. Right? And you can see some people, when they lose their desires for love, in some conditions, they don't even get up to brush their teeth. They don't even get up to go to the shower. And some cases we have people for weeks, they don't do anything, just on the bed, because they don't have desire for anything. So without desire, you wouldn't do anything. Desire is that thing put in us so that we get to the place where we're meant to go. It's the most beautiful gift we have. Desire is the engine for the soul that we are to get to its destination. Okay? So that's the nature of desire. It's beautiful. Without it, we wouldn't even be alive. And you can see, to the extent that people get rid of their desires, they become less and less alive. Years and years on the bed, can't even wake up in the morning, don't feel like going to work, don't feel like calling someone, don't feel like talking to anyone. So, if this is desire, then where does it want to get us to? Why do we have this strong, amazing engine inside us which keeps pushing us forward? And we know that this engine has a very important destination, because in life, no matter where we get, it still pushes us forward. How do we know that? Well, no matter what in this life we achieved, we acquired, as soon as we got there, it pushed us again somewhere else. As soon as you reach one of your desires, it desires something else. It desires something else, something else, something else. What does that tell us? That it has a very specific destination in mind, right? And as a result of that, you see human beings in this world keep wanting more and more and more, right? Anything that you desire right now, as soon as you have it, it becomes insufficient. You want more. You know, even right now, if you tell the person, we'll give you all the money on this earth, they would say, okay, I'm going to use this to go to the moon. I want the moon as well, which is what actually a lot of people are doing right now, trying to go to the moon or going to the Mars. So this is the nature of desire. Whatever you get, it says, no, I want more. I want more. We thought this is wrong, but it's not. It's actually very beautiful. But the mistake we made was that our desire makes us want more. That's the mistake we made. We didn't know our desire doesn't want more, wants all, wants everything. What? Our desire wants everything? Yes. So please pay attention. This is the very important part of tonight's talk. I said desire is the engine inside us. Life without desire, impossible. Desire is the engine that pushes us to where we should go. Without desire, we would stay here, we wouldn't eat, we wouldn't talk, right? I've seen people who wouldn't even eat. Once they lose the desire, they wouldn't even eat. Something that their body needs. Without desire, you wouldn't do anything. So desire is there to push you something. To push you to somewhere, to push you to get to somewhere. But no matter where we get in this life, it seems to push us further. I want more, I want more, I want more. That's where we made a mistake. It doesn't want more. It wants everything. It wants it all. So, our desire is for something infinite. And this is where it gets very linked to spirituality, to our relationship with the divine. See, our desire ultimately is to connect to our source, to God. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We come from God and we are to return back to God. And when I say God, I don't want the word to distract you, because the word has been used in so many negative words, in so many different ways, it's so confusing. When I say God, what I want you to hear is the source of everything. Everything. All of reality. That's what your soul wants. Your soul wants infinite. It says, I don't want even all the universe. No, I want the source of, I want all. And all of these desires you have within you that pushes you forward to get this, to get that, all of that is the energy inside, the engine inside to make you connect to all. You want everything. And short of everything, you will never be happy. You will never be satisfied. That is the destination, to have infinity. So our desire is boundaryless. There is no boundary to how much our soul desires. Huh? Isn't that beautiful? How much expectation is built into the system? Short of the source of universe, you will not be happy. But the problem we have right now is that instead of trying to get there in one go, we try to go in installments, right? And if you want to get to infinity, no matter how many installments you go, you'll never reach there, right? So now we think we're trying to get to infinity with one step after another. First, I'll graduate high school, then I'll graduate university, then I'll get a job, then I will marry. All of these are the steps we take with our desires. Let me get to this step. Let me get to this step. Then get a job. Then have this. Then have this. Then have that. Then have that. But the thing is, if your destination is infinite, no matter how many steps you take, you will never get there. As long as you want to do this in installments, right? As long as you want to do it in installments, you'll never get there. Because infinity is infinity. So what is the way? The way is to immediately want it all. So don't get rid of your desires. Don't reduce them. But understand that your desire is infinite. Increase your desires. Know that short of desiring everything there is, all of reality, the whole universe, and the creator, short of desiring that, you'll never be satisfied. So desire all. You are boundaryless. Your soul does not have any limit. Your soul does not have any boundary. So start wanting that. Increase your desires. And not in installments. Because installments will never get you there. Right? Imagine if you want to go to a place where it's so far. Even every day you take 10 kilometers, you'll never get there. So decide from the very first of your journey to get to the last step. But how can we do that? Now, this is another important point. As long as we try to get to that end goal through this body, we'll never be able to achieve it because our body is limited. It is our soul which is boundaryless, borderless, infinite. So we have to slowly understand this and try to pursue our desires through the soul. Inshallah, I'll talk about this more later on, but it may get a little bit too much for this one session. So I will pause this topic here. Inshallah, we'll carry this on. How can I pursue my desires through my soul? Because my body, this physical world, is limited. As long as I want to reach my desires through this body, I'll never get there. Because I want everything, and in a physical world, you can't have everything. Even if you have all of the physical world, your soul still wants more. So slowly, we'll talk about how can I pursue my desires through the soul. That's the topic for a different day. So that's just being said here. Let's just say that the solution was not to get rid of your desires, was not to reduce your desires. Your desire is one of the most beautiful things about you. It is that thing which is pushing you towards God. It is that thing which is pushing you towards the source of everything. You just have to understand that. Now, what I want to talk about now, before we get to the Q&A, is so how come my desires don't look this way? Okay? How come you're telling me the desire is the engine put inside me to want the source of it all, to get connected to my source? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We're going back to our source. We're going back home. And when I say home, it means getting dissolved in infinity. We want everything. We want God. Now, but my desires don't look that way. I want a job. I want to get married to this guy or to this girl. I want this. I want to get into this degree. I want this house. I want this shoes. I want this game. How can this be what you're talking about, Javad? Now, maybe another session will go into details, but I'll give an overview of what happens. Because we are not conscious, because we haven't reflected much on what desire actually is, what it wants from us, what its expectation, it's what we call it, it's not conscious in our mind. So what happens is that this desire throughout life keeps getting expressed through whatever happens to you. So these desires that you name, that you have right now, it's because we didn't sit and pay attention to what our actual desire is, but that desire can't just stay there. It wants to find a way out. So it keeps getting expressed through what happens to you in life. And let me show you why the things you desire right now are not actually related to who you are, but to the situation around you. Look at, for example, the kind of houses people want. If you live in UK, you may want a certain house with this quality, semi-detached or detached, nice amount of bedrooms with all of this. This would be the house you want. But if you, for example, live in a certain neighborhood in Canada where all the houses are maybe 5 times bigger than these tiny houses we have in London, and you see your neighbor has a house which is so massive, you no longer want the semi-detached house in London. What do you want? You want what your neighbor in this neighborhood in Canada has. It's massive. Okay? If you are, for example, living in a country where the best car there is a Toyota, and there are so many countries, then what you desire would be a Toyota. And this is a fact. Look at people. But then if you go to another country where your neighbor doesn't have a Toyota, your neighbor has for example, I don't know, the newest model of Mercedes or a Bentley, then that's what you want. So what does that tell you about your desires, about our desires? It's that within you, there is this force, the engine to push you forward, but because you're not paying attention to that, it's trying to express itself. It's trying to push you, at least for now, to do something. But the thing that it pushes you to achieve is the things that there are around you. So if your neighbor has this car, it pushes you to get that. If you're living in a different society, your neighbor has something else, it pushes you to achieve that. If at some point it becomes a trend in a society for people to study engineering, it pushes you to study engineering. If at some point it's a trend to study IT, programming, it pushes you to do that. So a lot of the times you see what we call desire is the unconscious expression of our life force based on the situation around us. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it's important to know this. Okay, it's important to know why this happens. And so desire, as we are experiencing it, is basically has nothing to do with who we are and all to do with the situation in which we're living. If we lived in a different city, in a different time, we would desire so many different things. And that says that the things we're desiring right now are not inherent to the person we are just the results of our life situation. And inshallah, I'll talk maybe another session about how to deal with this. But because the time is running out, I'll just say one thing about this. There is nothing wrong with having these kind of desires. And I'm going to actually share with you a tip to make sure that even in these kind of desires, before we make sure our desires for the infinite, because that may take some time, even before that, I want to give you a tip so that even in dealing with these desires, which we said are a result of the situation we found ourselves in, even in these desires, we don't get disappointed. Because even with these things, I will never tell you don't go after them. You should go after them. What is life without working for a house? Huh? You never need to avoid these. So again, even with regards to these things, which I'm saying are not your essential desires, they're the desires that happen to you as a result of the site. Even with these, you should go search for them. Go after them. If you can get them, get them. Why not? But how can we make sure you don't get hurt? That is the practice I want to teach you. And that is trying to make them conscious as opposed to compulsive. Now, please pay attention to this. This is a tip that can help you in many areas of life. In one of the sessions, if you remember, I said a lot of people talk without thinking the thing that I'm saying, is it helping someone or not? Why am I saying it? I gave this example. Someone came to our house when I was a teenager. He saw me wearing my brother's shirt and immediately said, "Oh, Jabba, you're wearing your brother's shirt." And I was a teenager. I got so embarrassed. And I always thought this person never meant to do any harm. But it just didn't think for 1 second. Why am I saying this? Does Jabba, Jabba doesn't know this is his brother's shirt? Why am I adding to the situation? Right? Thought came, turned into words, and just jumped out. This person never thought, like, you know what? I'm a human being. I can decide what to say. So this is what we call an unconscious talking. You're not conscious when you're talking. Thoughts come to your mind, turn into word, comes out. You don't hold them here. And this, to be conscious before you do anything, is a technique which can help you in so many areas of life. Right? Before you want to do something, be there. Decide if this is what you want to do or not. In anything, as simple as talking, as simple as putting, for example, there's something on the table. You know, they've even done a study. If a father or a mother wants to feed their children, let's say, for example, they've made chicken nuggets for the child, right? They say most parents, what they do is they take part of one of the chicken nuggets and they eat it themselves. It's not that they were hungry. It's not that they wanted to eat. It's just that when they see the chicken nugget, the thought comes to their mind and they do it. See? So they're not there. It's just happening. Life is happening without them, deciding how it should happen. But when you want to live, so this is what they call the kind of compulsive life, right? A thought comes, you say it. It's like compulsive. You didn't have any say in it. A thought comes to eat this chicken nugget, you eat it. There's nothing wrong with eating something, but you didn't decide. You weren't even there, right? So when you try to live consciously, you try to be there when you do something. If you want to talk to someone, say, okay, do I want to say this? If you want, then say it. Before you want to put that chicken nugget in your mouth, ask yourself, do I want to do this? Am I here? Or am I lost in thoughts? If I'm here, okay, do I want to eat this? Well, no, actually, I don't want to eat this now. I just ate half an hour ago. I'll put it back. Or you may say, no, actually, I want to eat it. Put it down. But you choose. You choose. Don't let it be on autopilot. Okay? Now, the more you practice this with simpler things, like talking, like taking that chicken nugget, although it depends on who you are, then you become stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, I always give the example of a football player. See, right now, many of us, if we want to, let's say, kick a ball, we won't have any much control on where it will land. We'll just kick and it goes somewhere. But a football player has had so much practice that they can choose where it will land, how long it will go. They can throw it exactly where they want. The length, how fast it should get there. Should it go up and come down? Where should it land? All of this with practice comes to them. Now, I want to say your desire should be like that. You should have it in your control, right? Don't say, I don't want to desire life. I don't want to desire things. No, because if you don't desire, you'll die. Life would be boring. What is life without desiring things? Without being involved? Without going out there and trying things? That's boring. You want to do all of that. So you don't want to keep all your desire here. You want to throw it out. You want to throw your life force out in the world. But you want to be there when you're doing this. You want the process to be conscious. You decide how much of your life force you throw into every action. You decide how much of yourself you give to any action, to any pursuit, and how long it should stay there. Okay? Now imagine, let's talk about something very simple. A football game. A football game. Now, a person may say, you know what, look at these people, how passionate they get over a football game, especially those who are not in a professional game, you know, if they're professionally, at least there's something. But it's a Sunday league, they're just playing in a park, they're not going to get anything out of it. So a person may look and say, you know what, this is crazy. You get so much passionate over something and then you fight, and if your team loses for a whole week, you're suffering, you're whole like disappointed, angry. Well, you know what? The way to fix this is to never be passionate about football. But that's nonsense. Why should you not be passionate about football? Football is fun. So the solution is this. Choose how much passionate you want to be about football. You can get to a place with practice that when the match is on, you throw your life force in it. You play like your life depends on it, right? And then as soon as the game is over, even if you lost, the life force that you threw into it, you bring it back. You bring it back, you put it safe. So even if you lost, it's fine. You're not going to ruminate afterwards. So what happens with practice is that you get to a place where you can get involved in something as much as you want. Have fun, be passionate about it, and as soon as it's over, you stop. You bring your life force back. Because the main problem is that people don't know how to bring their passion back. It becomes compulsive. That's the main problem, right? So with practice, once you take control of how much to get involved in something and how to bring it back, you can experience life, enjoy life, and at the same time never go through all of this suffering of unfulfilled desire. And this can be in so many different ways, okay? And now you may say, Sheikh Jawad, that's impossible. How can I do that? You can do that. Start small, right? Start small. In the same way that right now, you and I, if you want to kick a ball, we'll never be able to, for example, although some of you may can, well, myself, I may not be able to kick the ball and exactly hit a certain spot. I don't know if you've watched these videos on YouTube or not. They kick the ball, goes and hits a certain place in the post and comes back. It may seem impossible to us, but with practice, so many people are doing it. In the same way, if you practice, you can control your desire in any way you want. You throw it in the world, you go engage in games, in whatever you want. Like your life depends on it. You have fun, and as soon as it's done, you bring it back. The way to do this is to practice in small things. Be there when you're doing small things. When you're talking, try to make sure it's not on autopilot. When you're eating, try to make sure it's not on autopilot. And the more you do this, slowly, you'll see that even in places where you don't remember, it happens naturally. So for example, you may watch a movie and there's something that one of the characters in the movie has that you want. It could be anything. If you're married, then maybe, for example, they've got a house you want. If you're not married, maybe you see a relationship and you're like, oh, I want that. Okay? So what happens? You desired something. Now, if you are not there, if you are not conscious, You're watching a movie, you desired something, maybe the relationship, maybe the house, maybe the job, and you're not conscious, so that desire becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So you can't even enjoy the movie. The movie finishes and you're in your whole mind, you're just like, oh my God, if only I had a partner like that. If only I had that house. But if you're conscious, the moment your heart goes for that thing, like that partner or that house, you're there. You witness that. And you say, yes, actually, that's nice. It would have been amazing to have a partner like that. It would have been amazing to have a house like that. Okay, beautiful. Enjoy this desire for a few seconds and then bring it back. Believe me, you can. With practice, you can. You'll bring it back. Right? So you wouldn't even feel guilty about wanting that. Desire it as much as you want for a few seconds. Experience it. Oh, it's beautiful. I wish I had a partner like that. Or I wish I had this house. It would have been amazing. Feel the sweetness of it. It's so sweet, that desire. The pain starts if you don't bring it back. If the movie's over and you're still thinking, damn, I don't have that. That's the source of suffering. But with practice, you can enjoy it, get all the pleasure, all the warmth, and then bring it back. And Allah inshallah, maybe in the next sessions, we'll talk about how to do that, more practices. As I said, this is a weekly session. We're going to be talking about this for many sessions. So even if something is still not very clear, we'll have enough time to talk about it. Okay. So I think I spoke so much. So we're going to go for the Q&A, inshallah. The first question we received was, what about the desires that take us away from our goal? Okay? Now, again, this is why I said that as soon as you turn your desires from compulsive to conscious, a lot of these problems would be solved naturally, right? So, let's say a person is in a relationship. Okay, I'm just giving an example because a person messaged me last week and this was their issue. Okay, so the person messaged and said, I'm in a relationship, I'm very happy, I love my partner, but then apparently I was in a previous relationship, and so I'm with my partner, everything's going well, and suddenly I had the desire to contact the previous partner I had. So this person had got a divorce, started another relationship, the new relationship is going amazingly, they love each other, but one day this person experiences a very strong desire, like misses the previous partner and wants to contact them. So he was like, what do I do? And of course, they asked me this after that event, so they'd already done. I said, see, the first thing is to make sure we turn desires from compulsive to conscious. Many people, they don't even give themselves the time to think what I should be doing. As soon as the desire comes, it is followed by certain actions. Now, there may have certain boundaries on how far those actions go, right? But it immediately starts. So, for example, one of the things that this person did, it went on Facebook, started checking the Facebook of the previous partner. And of course, this is still he still didn't cross a boundary. He said, I didn't speak to them. But this part of it, that the desire came and this person immediately went on Facebook and checked the page of the previous partner. This part of it was compulsive. And so when I say try to turn your desires from compulsive to conscious, this is exactly why. So that if you're in a situation, you can decide whether you want to follow this desire or not. Right? Because a lot of us, we are on autopilot. A desire comes, we follow it till we hit, for example, a red line. Either we pass it or we stop somewhere. but all the way till then we go. Now, even if, for example, we don't go on their Facebook, we may think about that. Or you know what I mean? So when I say make your desire conscious, is this. The desire came, don't get lost, be there. Look, I'm here. I should decide whether I want to do this or not. And you can't do that right away on the spot. No, you should have had a lot of experience, a lot of practice with other things. Otherwise, if you don't practice with smaller things, you wouldn't even remember any of this when that desire comes. But when you've had enough practice, you're conscious. Desire comes, you're like, okay, this desire came. Do I want to act upon it or not? And then you think. You're like, you know what? It would be so fun because right now I miss my previous partner. So it would have been fun to talk to them. But I'm in a new relationship. I love my new partner. I respect them. This relationship is much more precious to me. So I will choose, even though this would have been fun to pursue, but I am conscious. My desires are not compulsive. So I'm not going to throw my life force over that. I'll hold it and throw it into my own relationship. Right? But you can only do that if you have had practice in easier things to turn your desires from compulsive to conscious. And now there are a few things which can help with this to make this process easier. One of them is that don't have guilt. You didn't bring this desire because guilt would just make everything nasty, would just make everything messy, would make everything difficult. You didn't want to have this desire. Out of nowhere it came. At least in this person who messaged me, he said, I woke up and I had the desire. So, okay, don't feel guilty. If you make it feel guilty, it's just going to get very difficult to handle with. Say, okay, this desire is there. Very well. It's there. But I choose what to do. And I'm not going to throw my life force there. I'm going to throw it somewhere else. It's the first thing that can help you. Second thing that can help you, and I actually wanted to mention this in one of the posts, is that understand where is the source of desire. Okay? This would help you a lot in your life. Now this example may not be relevant to your life, the one I just discussed, but there are so many times in life where we have a desire which doesn't make sense to us, okay? Especially if it's a desire for something that we think morally is wrong, okay? A few weeks ago, I had a person telling me that they were in a great relationship, but they suddenly felt attracted to another person. They still love their partner, but they just didn't know what is this attraction and desire they have suddenly for this other person, and it was so strong. Now, I explained to them what is the source of this. I said it doesn't mean there's anything love with your relationship. No, the reason for this is this and that. I explained it to them. But sometimes if you don't know what's happening to you, you may interpret your desires wrong. You may think there's something wrong with your relationship, or you may think that you're a bad person, right? But I explained it to them that no, sometimes the only reason you feel for a short time an attraction to someone else is that you see in them something that you need in your life to have. It doesn't mean that you need to be with this person. No, this person is just a mirror that tells you something about yourself. It doesn't mean your current relationship is bad. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. No. The reason you're feeling attracted to this person for a short while right now is just that they have a quality. It's a mirror. They have a quality that you need to gain in your life. You don't need to be with this person. Your relationship is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with you, with your relationship, nothing. Continue with your relationship. All this attraction means is that there's something maybe you need to gain, right? So in that example, that's what it was. So when a desire like this happens, which you feel like it's very confusing what's happening, don't get scared, don't panic, try to understand it. If you don't know how, if you can't interpret it, talk to someone. There are people who can help you with that, okay? So that's another way to make sure that problem doesn't happen to us. Understand what does your desire mean. Usually, they try to communicate with you. They're trying to tell you something. And if you know the message, you wouldn't get despaired. So in the case of that person who said, suddenly I remember my previous partner, I spoke to him. I said, okay, tell me about it. What was the situation? Have you been thinking about it? What's the situation? And I realized the reason actually that he remembered the previous partner was that this was the last stage of letting go, right? Because he had been with this new partner, they were having a great relationship, so slowly, he was letting go of the previous relationship. But there was parts of it which was subconscious. So it came up, it became conscious so that he could let go of the last part of it as well and be fully there, fully available to the new partner. So the old reason he felt like he needs to communicate was this. It was actually the last stage of letting go of the previous partner and to be fully available for the new partner. But because he didn't know this, he was interpreting it completely wrong, and he may have made a huge mistake if he had communicated or contacted or, said something which was so difficult to go back, right? So a lot of the times it's very important to be able to interpret, what does this desire mean right now? It may be the complete opposite of what you're perceiving it. So it's very important to talk to someone or to get help if you don't understand what your desire is trying to do. So 2 tips. Be conscious. Don't allow it to be compulsive. Second, understand what is your desire trying to communicate with you. A lot of the times it could be the opposite of what you interpreted it to be. Okay, so what other questions we had? Let me go and see. How can you recognize good desires from wrong? Well, this is exactly what I said. See, desires per se, we can't say they're wrong. Pursuing them could be wrong. Okay? If a desire becomes compulsive, it's wrong. Right? But desire per se is not good or wrong. It's just what it is. Okay? And usually there's a message in it. And the message is always something that you can actually get help from and become a better person. So desire per se, it would be difficult to say this is good desire or wrong desire. Pursuing it could become either good or bad, like either get us further, right? So usually a desire is a message that tells you something about who you are. Our desire should only be God. Okay. So I spoke about this, so in the first part, we spoke about that desire is the natural engine put inside us to push us towards our destination. And yes, our destination is our source, right? So in life, we want to have more and more and more, but that's not the answer. More is not the answer. All is the answer. All. So definitely. So in that sense, the main job of desire is to get us to God. And believe me, it'll never stop until it gets you to God. That's why my idea is that every single human being will get to God. Okay? No matter what they go after, because that's the thing with desire, it'll never stop. Pursue whatever kind of life you want. It'll never let you go, right? It'll keep pushing you forward and forward and forward and forward. And at some point, the person will realize that the way is to want all as opposed to more. So that's what desire does. And so in that sense, it is very true to say that our desire is to say God. But that doesn't mean that we can't desire love of a human being or a good house. Because it is wrong to see these things as separate from God. See, a mistake we make is we separate God from this universe. So we say you should desire God, you shouldn't desire these things. Who said these are separate from God? Who said though? Do you think God is not in this world? Do you think a person who wants a wife, who wants children, who wants a husband is desiring anything other than God? No, that's wrong. This world is created by God. That's why in Islam, you see, for example, it says, if you work to get a better house for your family, that's worship. You're getting close to God. Don't limit God to this entity in the sky that we should get close to. No. The journey to God happens through this world. But inshallah, we'll talk about it later on. So that's why desiring a lot of the things in this world, there's nothing wrong with it. As long as we realize that they're not compulsive, what they mean, and the ultimate desire. What is the ultimate desire? As long as we don't forget that, there's nothing wrong with desiring things in life. So that was that. Okay, let me see what other questions do we have. Okay. That seems to be it. When we are aligned with our true nature, then our desire will take us to our life's purpose. Is that correct? Exactly. And we'll talk about it, how to, inshallah, later on we'll talk about how can we make the journey shorter. Because right now, let me tell you something. Within us, there's something that will never stop unless we get to our destination. Destination is when our soul achieves infinity. Because your soul wants infinite things, wants infinity. It wants, borderlessness. And that can only happen when you get dissolved into God. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. So it will never stop unless it gets you there. Now, it's our choice whether we get there into installments, which is going to take forever, right? Or from the beginning, we open and we try to aim at that. Now, it's actually a good time to mention this. See, if you want to get close to God, like yesterday you're saying the ultimate desire is God. Okay, how would you get to God? How can you get to God? Right? Because a lot of people say, no, our only desire should be God. Our ultimate desire is God. Okay, how would you get to God? What is what is the address? Do I take the right at the next turn and then a left at the next junction? How do I get close to God? Right? Now, it's very important to know that this journey to God happens through your life in this world. Of course, it would definitely help if you learn to address it consciously, and we'll talk about it. But you have to know that ultimately your journey to God is through this world, through physical things or parts of it. So something that can help you actually, if you want to connect your physical life to the journey of the soul to get to the ultimate. Let me put it this way. Because we have to go towards God through this life, through this world, with all its desires and everything. Now, a way to make sure even the small desires are in line with that desire is to sit down and write a plan for your life. Okay? Try to sit down and think based on what you think. The values you have, not what others say this is good, not the things you've heard, no, the things which you fully accept in your heart. So sit down and say, based on the values I hold in my heart, what would be the best outcome for my life? Where should I get? What should my life look like? What kind of person should be in my life so that I have the best life and my life has the best impact for my family, for my community, and for the world. Okay? So, what should my life look like, let's say in 10 years or in 20 years? The best thing you can think of. So that I'm having a great life. I get all my desires. But I get all my desires without hurting my family. So I get all my desires, and I'm the best person I can be for my family. I get all my desires. I'm the best person for my family. I'm the best person for my community. I'm the best person for the world. Okay? When you write this plan, naturally, you're aligning all your desires, big, small, short, and thing, you're aligning them with the ultimate desire, which is God. And then you don't need to detach from this life. No, because the life that you've chosen, the path you've chosen from this world is your path to God. So be involved in this world and have fun, enjoy it, and rest assured that it's going to take you to God. Right? So this would be a great path to align your short desires to your ultimate desires. And then again, you don't need to worry about, oh, it's this dunya, it's this. No, enjoy everything. Okay, so let me see if there's any other question. Otherwise, we can end this session. It's getting a little bit late. Please, if you have any other questions, I'm at your service. Otherwise, inshallah. Oh, alhamdulillah. Seems like we've answered all the questions. Perfect. Have a lovely evening, inshallah. I hope that you enjoyed the session. Inshallah, it would be uploaded on YouTube tomorrow. So if you want to share it or if you want to watch it again, inshallah, it will be on YouTube, the Non-Snoozers channel. And inshallah, join us next week. And inshallah, slowly, we'll try to make this more practical and make sure all the steps are clear. Because right now you may feel like, okay, a lot of this may be difficult, etc. But the more we talk about it, the easier it will become. And you'll see that a lot of this is possible for you. And inshallah, slowly together, we'll learn how to live better. Because the goal is to live this life and enjoy it. And I want to end on this point. Everyone will get to their destination. I promise you. Everyone will get to their destination, to God. Every single person. The only thing that we can choose on this way is how long it will take and what is the ride going to be like. Whether it's going to be a fun ride or a miserable ride. And inshallah, in this series, we'll learn tips that can help us make sure this ride is more pleasant. We can enjoy every second of it, enjoy every moment of this life of being next to our family members, our friends, people, everything, and get close to God. Because why not? So inshallah, see you next week.